You think you understand slavery because you've seen the images that history chose to keep. Chains on ships crossing the Atlantic. Plantation fields under a burning sun. Names, dates, and numbers that feel safely distant. But history is not a single story, and memory is not evenly distributed. Some systems leave descendants who remember. Others leave silence. What follows is not a replacement for what you already know. It is the part that rarely makes it into classrooms, not because it is fictional, but because it is complicated, fragmented, and deeply uncomfortable. For more than a millennium, from the early medieval world into the modern era, vast systems of enslavement operated across North Africa, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and parts of Central Asia. They were not uniform. They changed over time. They differed by empire, region, and period. But taken together, they formed one of the longest-running structures of human captivity in recorded history. Unlike the Atlantic trade, these systems did not primarily aim to create self-reproducing labor populations. Many forms of enslavement were temporary. Others were terminal. Some absorbed captives into ruling structures. Others erased them entirely. That difference matters, because it explains why memory itself behaves differently. One of the most documented systems involved the forced recruitment of non-Muslim boys from parts of southeastern Europe into the Ottoman state apparatus. Known to historians as the Devshirme, it functioned intermittently for centuries. State officials periodically collected boys from Christian communities, selected for physical health and aptitude, and removed them permanently from their families. These children were converted, educated, and trained for service as soldiers or administrators. Some rose to extraordinary power. Others disappeared into anonymity. The system did not exist everywhere, nor did it operate continuously, but where it did, its impact was profound. For families, the experience was not abstract policy. It was the sound of officials arriving, the sudden calculation of loss, the knowledge that resistance was impossible. Contemporary letters and petitions describe parents attempting bribery, pleading, even self-injury to make children appear unfit. Not because they misunderstood opportunity, but because they understood finality. The state saw efficiency. Families experienced erasure. What made this system uniquely destabilizing was not just the removal of children, but the long-term demographic effect. Villages lost future labor, inheritance lines broke, and cultural transmission weakened. Over generations, some communities shrank not through massacre, but through absence. This was not the only form of enslavement. Across Trans-Saharan and Red Sea routes, enslaved people were moved over extreme distances. Mortality during transport was high, driven by climate, dehydration, disease, and violence. Archaeological and written evidence confirms that many never reached their destinations. Some captives were absorbed into households, armies, or workshops. Others were subjected to practices that ensured they would leave no descendants. The reasons varied by period and market demand, but the result was the same. Entire human lines ended without trace. Economic records survive. Ledgers listing prices, transport costs, losses. The language is transactional. Human suffering reduced to columns of profit and risk. It is here, more than in any dramatic narrative, that the scale becomes clear. Not because of emotion, but because of repetition. When loss becomes expected, it becomes invisible. Slavery in these regions was not only about labor. It was about power structures designed to prevent continuity among the enslaved. Where Atlantic slavery produced new cultures under horrific conditions, many old world systems consumed people without replacement. That difference explains the silence. There are no large descendant populations demanding recognition. No inherited songs, foods, or traditions tracing back to captivity. The people who passed through these systems often left no genetic or cultural footprint. History remembers what survives. Economic pressure reinforced this erasure. In many regions, non-Muslim populations were subjected to layered taxation systems that went beyond revenue. These taxes varied by time and place, but their effect was consistent. Reduced capacity to accumulate wealth, limited mobility, and constant vulnerability. Surviving tax records from Egypt, Syria, and Anatolia show families operating permanently at the edge of subsistence. Bad harvests became disasters. Children died not from violence but from arithmetic. When survival required conversion, conversion followed. This was not always enforced with brutality. Often it didn't need to be. Systems that make resistance mathematically impossible do not require constant force. Cultural loss followed economics. Languages retreated from administration to worship, from worship to home, from home to memory. Coptic, once the living descendant of ancient Egyptian, gradually vanished as a spoken language, not through decree alone, but through generational necessity. Parents taught children the language that allowed survival. Religious communities faced similar pressure. Zoroastrianism, once the faith of empires, declined through centuries of temple destruction, legal marginalization, and forced migration. Survivors carried fragments of texts and rituals into exile. What remained was preservation, not continuity. In parts of Central and South Asia, Buddhist institutions collapsed after waves of invasion and targeted destruction. Libraries burned. Monasteries emptied. Knowledge systems that had taken centuries to build disappeared in decades. Ash layers in archaeological sites confirm what chronicles describe. This was not accidental loss. It was systematic dismantling. And then there is the part history struggles most to narrate. Women. Across many slave systems, women were treated not as workers, but as property in the most intimate sense. Market records from Crimea, Cairo, and other hubs list ages, origins, and prices with disturbing precision. Foreign observers left accounts filled with revulsion and helplessness. Yet even here, history fractures. Many victims left no names, no letters, no descendants. Their lives exist only as transactions. When systems are designed to erase lineage, memory dies with the individual. That may be the most unsettling truth of all. We remember Atlantic slavery in part because its survivors lived, reproduced, and built cultures that demanded recognition. Other systems left silence so complete that absence itself became the legacy. This does not make one horror cancel another. It makes comparison dangerous. History is not a competition of suffering. It is a record of structures, and of what those structures were designed to produce. Some produced labor. Some produced obedience. Some produced power. Some produced disappearance. And disappearance leaves no lobby, no museum, no commemorative month. Only documents. Archives in Istanbul, Cairo, Rome, Vienna, and London still contain contracts, tax registers, and correspondence. They do not shout. They wait. Reading them is not an act of accusation, but of responsibility. Because forgetting is easy when forgetting benefits stability. This history is not hidden by secret cabals. It is hidden by discomfort, by academic caution, by the fear of being misunderstood, misused, or politicized. Silence, in this case, is not innocence. It is avoidance. Understanding it does not require hatred. It requires maturity. Because the lesson is not about who was evil. It is about what systems do when they are allowed to treat humans as inventory. Once that door opens, culture, faith, ethnicity, and morality become tools, not limits.